This is Learning to Dad.
I'm the cool dad. That's my thing.
With Tyler Ross.
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills.
I'm going to have fun, and you're going to have fun.
All right. Hello, and welcome to Learning to Dad. My name is Tyler Ross, and my guest today is U.S. Army Captain Green Beret, and I'm pretty sure you lent your wallet to Sam Jackson in Pulp Fiction because it says bad motherfucker on it. And I think that's your wallet, man.
I think you answered my first question is, are we allowed to curse on this podcast? Happens.
Absolutely. It's a bunch of dads listening. Yeah. Probably some moms too, and every one of them have let a little bit out. But
it happens.
Yeah, the things that I know about you, I know John O'Bannon put us together. He's been a great supporter of the show. You guys played lacrosse together at Woodbury Forest in Virginia. Yeah. I played lacrosse with John. I have a special place in my heart for you because you played midfield and defense. I know you played attack too, but we'll only count midfield and defense. But yeah, you went to West Point, played lacrosse there, deployed to Afghanistan a couple times. You stepped on a bomb, your third deployment, lost your legs, injured your arm and hand.
Yeah.
And it's going to bring me tears to think about it, but I know you had a daughter after that injury. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You led a 12-man special forces team. Like, you're a leader. I can't wait to talk to you about resilience, your kids, everything. But, let's start with what you're doing now.
Yeah, being a dad, full-time dad. But my day job now is I actually work in private aviation. Mm-hmm. And I'm a vice president of all of the business operations for an aircraft management company. It's called PAM Jets, and they're based out of Los Angeles. And we have an office up in Teterboro for all our New York City clients, and down in Miami. And we have a bunch of South Florida stuff going on. So I joke about it all the time. I travel more now without legs than I did with legs. Constantly on the go just for work. And I found myself in this field that I knew nothing about, but as I got introduced to it, and the guy that brought me on that I helped start the company up with, he came from private aviation, and I told him, I said, Dave, you know me, I'm an SF guy. I jumped out of planes. I know how to talk to planes to drop bombs. I don't know much about Gulfstreams and private jets. And he's like, no, don't worry. We'll teach you about that. So it's actually been interesting. It's an industry that I knew nothing about on one hand, but at the same time, it's stuff that I actually knew about, operations and the logistics and the day-to-day stuff and the planning. The private aviation world was created by a bunch of guys after World War II that got out that, they all learned how to fly B-29s, and they got into private aviation that way out in Los Angeles and kind of built up the Van Nuys airfield. And it's not so far-fetched for a veteran like myself to end up working in private aviation and dealing with Gulfstreams and Bombardier business jets. So it's kind of what I do now.
That's very cool. And you seem energized about it and psyched about it. How long have you been doing it?
So I've been with the company since day one. We started the company up from scratch, and I think 2.5 years. And within 2.5 years, we went from 0 clients to we have 11, I believe it is. We're about to sign on full-time planes that we manage. And I tell people a lot that get out of the military, especially coming from special operations, that when you leave, you're going to have a huge void, because what we did day to day was this exciting job, and it is what it is. We jumped out of planes. We made things go boom. We traveled around the world. We learned another language, right? And it's really interesting. But, you get out of the Army on Monday, and on Tuesday, it's kind of like, well, what do I do? And, the sooner that you can realize that you'll never experience something that was that total package again like that, but you'll be able to do things like, instead of teaching guerrilla forces how to overthrow a government, I actually love being able to teach my kids hockey and things that I loved growing up, right? And being that dad. And instead of being able to plan unconventional warfare for overthrowing some country and wherever, now I'm planning business operations and trying to figure out how to break into the Latin American market using my Spanish skills. So if you're able to kind of piece things together, I think they were able to do a pretty good job at filling that void of what, kept your interest going. And that's kind of what I've been doing. And, honestly, I had to kind of figure that out for myself, stepping on a bomb and waking up in a hospital bed and, coming to the conclusion that I don't have legs anymore and life's not going to be the same. And, what's kind of figuring out what's important to me.
So do you find yourself in a position to speak to a lot of veterans on that particular subject, kind of help them adjust, particularly injured veterans?
Yeah, I do. It's not something that it's my second gig and, go to my website and I'll come talk to you. It's just word of mouth. I do some speaking engagement stuff, but that's really kind of somebody asked me to come talk to the hockey team, a lacrosse team or something like that. And I think of it as kind of like giving back and paying it forward, just to be able to help out younger guys, whether it's a high school team or college team. But I haven't really had the opportunity to act as an official mentor to guys getting out of the military. It's just, it's such a small community that I still talk to everyone on my team. And I still talk to guys that I went through the Special Forces qualification course. And I still talk to my lacrosse teammates that I played lacrosse with up at West Point. And, it's something that we always talk about, especially for, our generation, deploying. I mean, so for me personally, I was a freshman in high school when 9/11 happened. I deployed to Iraq and from 06 to 07, I was there for 15 months. I went to Afghanistan twice. So, I did a lot of stuff, but my classmates, the same deal. So, to get out and to be able to look back 15 years ago, everything that we did and how the world has kind of changed and deployments are a little different now. And the fight's not just the same fight it was, when we were in Iraq, and that was like the Wild West. It's stuff that we still talk about. Yeah.
And I got so many different things that I want to go over with you, and I hope I will put a pin in the one that's in my head, because I like to start with what's going on now and then kind of go back towards the beginning so that we have an idea of what your world was like when kids were introduced to it. So I think a good place to start would be maybe tell me about when you met your wife.
So Gina and I actually met each other when we were in middle school, and we we're both from Long Island, both from Great Neck, and I went to Great Neck North and she went to Great Neck South, so opposite sides of the town. So the first time that I actually saw her was at the skating rink Friday night, and that was kind of like the thing to do in middle school, was go to the ice skating rink on Friday nights, right?
Yeah.
And hockey was my first sport and first love, and I remember kind of skating around her and being a little brat and maybe trying to spray her because she couldn't skate. And I remember seventh grade also being in a big Jewish town. We were going to bar mitzvahs all the time, and I saw her there again. And I think I asked her out at a bar mitzvah, and then we were each other's first kiss in seventh grade in front of this movie theater in town. And that's where Gina and I first met. And then I went to Woodbury. My parents got divorced. My mom moved back down to North Carolina. My dad moved into the city. So I never really went back to my town on Long Island, to Great Neck. The only time I was back on Long Island was maybe to visit some family, or when in college to go back to the island with friends that were from Huntington or somewhere out in Suffolk, right? And so fast forward, it would have been the summer of 06. I'm about to deploy to Iraq, and I'm down in Texas, and it's it's a Saturday afternoon. We're probably me and my lieutenant buddies are all texting each other, trying to figure out when we're going to drive the 40 minutes to Austin to go hang out on 6th Street.
Yeah.
And I think I was on MySpace at the time, and I'm just Googling who I knew. I'm totally bored, so I'm just seeing who I would have graduated high school with back in the islands. On MySpace, and I'm like, oh no, I remember that kid, and I remember that kid, and I randomly come across Gina, and I'm like, holy shit, I remember this girl. Yeah. And so I friend request her, and then she wrote me a message back saying, did you used to live in Great Neck, and your nickname was Bear on the hockey team? So I'm thinking, this girl has no clue, she doesn't remember me. Yeah. And that's how we started talking again. I was like, yeah, it's me, Ben. She's like, oh no, I remember you. And we started emailing, and I deployed to Iraq. And while I was in Iraq, we still just kept on, playing email pen pal. And I came back from my mid-tour leave. So I had 15 days off, and I came back, and I spent most of it actually up in New York just so I could hang out with her and start to officially date and see each other.
Wow.
And when I came back from Iraq in 2007, I was in Texas. She was still up in New York. So we had this long distance relationship, and I actually proposed to her in front of the movie theater that we had our first kiss at back in 7th grade. It was actually the reason I remember it, and we always joke about it, was the night that OJ ran off in the white Bronco.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's one of the things you will never forget the date. You could always just Google when did OJ run away in the Bronco. And, I think it's June 26th or 28th or something crazy like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, what an unconventional way to start a relationship. For 2 years, is it fair to say that you guys had spent less than just a couple weeks together?
Yeah. So it was probably, I'd say a year, because my deployment was 15 months. So yeah, it's for about a year, a little more. We had this kind of long distance relationship where in between those 15 months, I came home and we went out on a couple of dates, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah. And so, and you proposed to her in front of that same theater. Get married and you're deployed again after you get married, or did you get deployed and then got married?
So let's see. So we got married, and then I started the Special Forces qualification course. So Gina moved down to North Carolina because the course is at Fort Bragg. And for officers, it's a little more than a year. It's probably about a year and a half. And depending on what your specialty is on the team and your language, for medics that are learning a longer language like Russian or Chinese, you could be going through the Special Forces qualification course for 2 years before you get the team. But for officers, for me, because I was learning Spanish, so it's one of the shorter languages. I think it was a year, and maybe it was 18 months or something like that. So we were down at Fort Bragg, and then from there, I deployed to Afghanistan. My first deployment as an SF guy to Afghanistan. Gina stayed back in North Carolina and went back to New York a little bit too, just to be around family. Mm-hmm. But we had actually ended up, she got pregnant right before I left for that deployment. So I actually came home about a month early for my first kid, Peyton, to be born.
So I've never been deployed anywhere. The closest I've probably ever been, though, is while my wife was pregnant. You missed.
Yeah. Well, I always joke about it. I'm like, that was the easiest pregnancy to do.
That's what I was trying to do.
I didn't find it as funny.
Yeah, you weren't bringing macaroni and cheese and chicken nuggets to your wife every hour on the request.
No.
But so I'd imagine that the headspace that you're in, having been deploying again, and then having a kid, did that change the way that you approached your job overseas?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it sounds so cliche, but once you have a kid, I mean, you totally look through life in a totally different lens, right? And, going back on my third total deployment, my second deployment as an SF guy, it just, I don't know, you don't, obviously you don't want to risk anything anyway, normally, and you're careful to plan stuff. And, but I think that, thinking about what I wanted to do after that deployment, I was more ready to kind of call it quits in the military and special operations. And, I had Gina send me a GMAT test book while I was on that deployment, because I figured, I'm going to get out. I never really was in the military to make general, and I saw what higher ranking officers had to do, and it didn't look fun anymore. And I always thought that I was going to get out of the military when it stopped being fun. And, I was always I tell people I was in it more for the journey and not so much the destination. And, it just, so happened that fate had it that I stepped on the bomb, and that was it. I was done. So, I mean, I was thinking about getting out anyway. This kind of sealed the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So how old was your son, when you stepped on the bomb?
Peyton was 9 months, I believe, when I got injured.
Okay, so his life, which he, as I recall in the article, which I'm gonna give this article a little shout out. uslaxmagazine.com. If you look up Ben Harrow's name, I'm sure you'll find it, written by Matt Hamilton. That was a good article. It said that your son was born in, I want to say 2011. So he's 7-ish now.
Yeah, he's 8 now. Yeah.
So he's always
started 3rd grade.
So his basically entire life, he's known you as you are now.
Exactly. And, and that was really, talking about waking up in a hospital bed and kind of coming to and realizing that life is going to be different now. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that I definitely knew was kind of like my purpose, was making sure that I can give my son and then, now daughter too, the most normal like life there is, and be like the dad that I still wanted to be. Right. Like it's still obviously tough, but I've worked it to a way where, I'm lucky enough to be able to work from home, and I travel a little bit. So I'm able to take him to soccer. Look, I'll be honest, if it fucking kills me, I grew up learning how to ice skate when I was 4. My dad put me on the ice, and I skated with my dad. Can't skate with my son. It's just one of those things. But I'm cognizant of that, and I try to do other things, I guess, to make up for that. And I will say, bless his little heart. He has my determination and resiliency. He's become a pretty good soccer player. And I tell people all the time, that in itself is something amazing, because let's be honest, I don't have legs. I'm not outside kicking the soccer ball with him. It's all him. And, he made the travel team this year, and I'm not just saying this as like a proud dad, but I'm like, as an athlete, I'm like, that kid is actually pretty talented at soccer. And, how I was, and probably you, in high school, like I'm going to go find a wall and just throw on the wall for a couple hours and work on my left. That kid's out back. Like he's dribbling all over the backyard, and we don't even have that much of a backyard, and it's on a hill. So he's like running uphill half the time and like doing these soccer drills, and it's all on him, and he's 8 years old. So I feel like if there's one thing he's been able to absorb from me, is that determination and that work ethic, and I think that's something both myself and my wife like really want to ingrain in our kids, is that work ethic. And nothing comes free in life, and you got to work for it.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And you keyed in on one of my favorite words and topics, is resilience. And I want to jump into that, but first I want to ask you about what did your injury teach you about your relationship with Gina?
Yeah, it definitely strengthened it. I know Gina tells the story all the time that she was, for her, she didn't know if I was going to live or die, really. They told her that, don't go to Germany. She wanted to fly to Germany to be there as I flew from Afghanistan. And they're like, look, honestly, don't fly there, because he may die in Germany. And then, when the body goes to Dover, you're going to miss it, because you guys will be in the air. And so she had no clue what she was going to be walking into, right? Like, Ben stepped on this bomb. How effed up in the head is he? Is he cognizant? Like everything. I'm sure she was thinking from A to Z, worst nightmare. And I still remember, even though I was kind of in and out of it, getting taken off the ambulance and seeing her for the first time at Walter Reed. And I think I was in the elevator, and my good friend of mine and his wife, who I played lacrosse with, Maddie Element, I think were there also. And I look over and I see Gina, and I just said, "Hey, babe." And she, like, right then she knew that it was like, all right, like it's fucked up that he doesn't have legs and all these other injuries going on, but mentally it's still Ben. So I think that put a lot of her worries to bed right away.
Yeah.
And then, I think it reinforced how important family really is. For me, for somebody that was constantly deploying and, having everything taken away from you, just how important it really is to be there for one another. So I think that any little things that any cracks or fractures that we had in our relationship before, like, anyone does, that probably solidified and fixed those. Just because, going through a crucible like this, just really, it strengthens it, right? It's like anything else in life. You kind of go through a test like this and you come out stronger.
Yeah, I think one of the major problems that I have in communicating with my wife is my ego. If I don't let it go, I'm not going to allow some of those gaps to get filled in because I'm protecting them. Did you find that, you know, you had to overcome like this ego from, you know, as you were recovering, or did you find that it wiped away and that you were open and available and made for a better partner in that sense?
Yeah. So ego is interesting. I tell people a lot that whatever type of facade you had, that shit got blown away with your whatever limbs you're missing, right? Like you are who you are, especially now.
Yeah.
And I think the ego thing, you know, with my wife is, you know, definitely helped. And I'm sure she'll say different, especially now because I'm a little more mobile and cocky again. But it's, you know, in the beginning, look, it's going back to the dad thing in the beginning, you know, I wasn't as mobile as I am now. You know, I'm up and walking on legs, and we went through a whole process for learning how to do that, and a whole bone lengthening process for even being able to get a chance to learn how to walk on prosthetic legs. And, you know, before that, I was in a regular, you know, wheelchair. But in the very beginning, I mean, I was banged up. So I'm in this like Dr. Evil motorized wheelchair. You know, this arm was like cocked all the way back, like that movie Rookie of the Year where the kid breaks his arm and he's got like that super strength, right?
Yeah.
And so like Gina, God bless her, she still like forced me and made me step outside my comfort zone to like go pick up Peyton at daycare, even though I'm like stuck in this like motorized wheelchair, you know, so I got to get in this handicap van with this ramp and drive over there and go pick up Peyton. And, you know, I would put him on my lap as I would like, you know, use the little joystick to drive my wheelchair to and fro for like the first 6 months before my right arm was like strong enough to use a regular wheelchair. So yeah, like that ego thing, you know, I was a 4-year Letterman college athlete, D1 lacrosse player, you know, special forces, tactical athlete, and then boom, I'm this guy that can't even like walk, right? So you're talking about a major blow to ego. So I could easily have sat there and been like, nah, I can't do it. You know, like I feel sorry for myself. But to be honest, those thoughts never crossed my mind. It just didn't seem like a thing to me. It was like, no, you're right. I should go do that. Thank you for reminding me to like push myself, you know? So the ego thing, I think that she helped me kind of like get over any sort of bruised ego I had and like get my ass back into gear.
Yeah. Well, our mutual friend, John, had told me, you know, he knew you in high school, and he said that you always worked hard. You were always a grinder. And that's evident by, you know, this article that, again, I'll encourage people to read, that you came out of the hospital, you know, 4 months faster than anybody thought. And so do you feel like you are resilient as a result of your upbringing, or do you think it's innate, like the way your son is out there, you know, working his ass off? You know, how did you become that way?
I get asked that all the time. Yeah. And I think it's such a mixture of things. You know, I definitely wasn't raised with a silver spoon in my mouth, and I kind of had to work for stuff. And I think it kind of really all started at Woodbury with, you know, given those opportunities that you have. I mean, it's not like I was destined to go to some elite all boys boarding school. It was an opportunity that was given to me. And I'll still remember my granddad sat me down after my first trimester of grades, and I had like C's and D's, and he's like, look, this is an opportunity. He's like, you know, I'm paying for this. Your grandmother's helping pay for this. People are helping pay for you to go to the school. He's like, this isn't like playtime. He's like, this is time, you know, this is like an investment. He's like, this is like a job. He's like, he's like, don't, you know, there's people that are expecting for you to succeed, you know, that want you to succeed, that want to see you succeed. So take advantage of those opportunities. And, you know, like, I'm sure like everybody, I really looked up to my grandfather, and at 15 to have this feeling like I just like let him down, it was kind of shitty. And, you know, so I really took advantage of every opportunity I had at Woodbury, whether that was for academics or for athletics. That's kind of where it all started. And I think I started to see the results of hard work at a young age, and it just made sense to me. And all right, well, if I keep working a little harder in this direction, let's see how far I can go. And that, you know, I made it to here. Let me work a little farther, you know, and then obviously going to West Point and going down, the ranks of the military, if you're willing to, you can really learn about mental toughness in the military as an understatement, right? Especially in the world of special operations. So it's like a graduate school for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of saw it and felt it. So how do you think you can make your kids resilient? They weren't old enough to kind of see the work that you had to put in to be able to walk again, to use your prosthetic legs. They didn't see you go through special forces qualification. They didn't see you put in the work at the gym and the lacrosse field. Like, how can you teach your kids to be resilient, do you think?
Sports. I think sports are so big for kids. Growing up, I played like every sport there was, and I was a multi-sport athlete. And I think that's so important for athletic development. And nowadays, you see a lot of parents just focusing on one sport. Their kid will be 8 and they think that their kid's going to be going to like Chaddock St. Mary's to be the next Sidney Crosby, and he needs to eat like 6 days a week. And I remember playing hockey with kids that's all they did was play hockey, and they were kind of this one sport athlete. And then, they went off and played junior somewhere and magically developed a coke habit, right? Because mommy and daddy wasn't there to make sure that they were like pushing themselves, right? Yeah. And with sports, my son in particular, like with soccer, for example, he's starting to see at a young age, if he's out there practicing on his own, there's benefits to that and rewards that he'll reap from that, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's just little lessons like that he will start to figure out, all right, well, if I do this in sports, maybe if I do this in academics in school, right, then he'll start to see it that way and progressing as well. But I think athletic competition in sports is so big with development, with resiliency and mental toughness. Look, my kid's 8. It's not like I got him outside like running wind sprints, but at the same time, I will encourage him to work hard. And, some days he doesn't want to go to practice, and that's fine, but we're not going to sit at home. I take him down to the park and I make him run around the park for like an hour. He's doing something athletic and running around and being outside and developing. I think that's so important.
I couldn't agree more. How old's your daughter?
Marquesa is 4.
4.
Yeah, she just started pre-K, so she'll be in kindergarten next year.
Yeah, my daughter's going to be 5 on Sunday, so we got kind of in the same boat there. What do you think is the biggest difference you're seeing between raising a boy and a girl? They're just it's so funny. They're just so different personality-wise. He's a little more timid and shy, and Marquesa will just go up to anybody at the playground and say, "Hey, best friend, come play with me." And she's like she's 4 years old, but she's like this little Pied Piper of kids at the playground, and making kids follow her around. And she's this she's this like born leader, and it's pretty interesting to see. She's real big into like singing and dancing and girly type things, and that's cool. I think that we'll probably get her. I told Gina today, I was like, we should get her on the ice just to teach her how to skate, because it's a skill that you probably need to learn younger if you're going to do anything with it. And, Gina wants her to, be a figure skater and doesn't want her to play hockey, which is whatever. It's just, I just wanted to do activities, right? I just wanted to do sports things. Yeah. So we'll see. Like I said, she's 4. So maybe like little kid karate, maybe like soccer, just something. Yeah, I had my daughter in jiu-jitsu for a couple of weeks, and then we got thrown out. But there was nothing more satisfying than watching her, as 4-year-olds do, choke each other out, tap out, and then say, all right, let's go again.
Yep.
It's just so you learn how to fail, to be dominated by somebody else, and then get up, dust off, and go.
Yeah. The failure thing is so big. I think that it's part of the resiliency piece. And it's with everything in life I do. And I was just talking to Mike Rabel, who's one of the co-founders of the PLL, the Premier Lacrosse League. And we were talking about, how successful they've been and things that, looking back on year 1 that they would have done differently. And I was like, yeah, man, but those are the biggest lessons. Like, you really need to be able to like remember those, because year 2 and 3, you won't make that same mistake, but it's because you failed year 1 on certain things. And it's, for me, I look back and it's like, for everything, for learning how to walk on legs, I may be able to walk into a room, or I walk through airports, or wherever, and I don't need a wheelchair, and people go, oh my God, that's amazing. but people don't also see how many times I fell, right? Or like still learning how to walk down ramps or like down a stair. It's pretty much like riding a skateboard and going down a half pipe on these things, but they can cave in any minute. So you got to have this like perfect balance. It's, people I think focus too much on like the after product and that success. And they don't always realize that there was a lot of fucking failures before that. Right. Like I tell Peyton all the time, I was like, look, Michael Jordan didn't make the varsity basketball team first time around. He got cut. And, that's something that you need to remember.
That's awesome. I've got so many different, my mind's spinning in 1,000 different directions. Let me ask you about leadership, because you brought leadership up, being in the special forces, starting and then becoming a captain and leading men. Can you talk to me a little bit about like the way that kind of influenced or equipped you as a parent or a spouse?
Yeah, I mean, I think with what I did in special forces, not so much from leadership, but also understanding that, especially in special forces, you're one of 12. So wherever you are in the woods, in the jungle, in some city in Europe, wherever, you're one of 12. So you better be a team player. And going through the special forces qualification course, that's what they're looking for, is guys that can work well with other people in high stress environments, right? So throughout the course, you're constantly able to peer people out if they're not team players, and you're constantly being assessed and ranked with how you are with your peers. Being a team player also means kind of giving into other people's wishes and demands, right? Mm-hmm. It's not always going to be about, as Gina says, it's not, this isn't Ben's world and we're just living in it. It's true, and that's something I think that as a spouse and a parent, realizing that it's not, it definitely isn't about me anymore. It's more about the two little ones that we're raising and making sure that we're trying to do the best for them. I guess leadership wise, I'd say one of my biggest leadership things was always trying to lead by example. Mm-hmm. Obviously can't do that so much anymore by just the simple fact that I'm not able to run around and kind of show Peyton like how to do it. So I kind of have to get clever and think of other ways to show him hard work or show him what right looks like. Yeah.
What's something different about the way your kids are growing up than the way you grew up?
I mean, I do think that we have given both of, Gina also, she grew up maybe on the wealthier side of town, but her parents were pretty strict with her. And I grew up not on a great side of town. And, like I said, didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth and kind of just your middle class Long Island family. But I think our kids are definitely growing up in a nicer area, and they definitely have a lot more opportunities than we had growing up. Look, me personally, I loved hockey. I wish my dad was around to take me to the rink all the time. And, if I wanted to skate, they'd be able to cover that expense. And I used to have to sneak onto the rink and, beg and plead to stay after, Saturday night sessions just to be able to skate for 30 minutes with a puck and a stick. Now he has all these opportunities, whether it's soccer or hockey. But that's something that we as parents want to do, right? Like you always want to be able to give more to your kids, and Gina and I work our asses off for that. But we know at the end of the day, it's giving those opportunities and the ability for our kids to do stuff that we weren't able to do when, I was 8 or 4.
How about the flip side of that? Like, what's an advantage that you had growing up that your kids don't or won't have?
Probably growing up in New York.
Yeah.
We joke about it all the time. Like Peyton and Marquez are lucky to have two parents that grew up on Long Island and kind of learned, adult things that most people I feel like learn about in college. I think that we were dealing with as like freshmen in high school and at a really young age, whether that's just, sex and drugs and crime and just adult type things. And I think that with our experiences, just kind of coming from where we did, it kind of puts them, I feel like, a little more of an advantage. We said, Peyton may have been born in North Carolina, but he's raised as like a New Yorker.
Yeah. Where do you guys live now?
In Bethesda.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Which is very similar to, it's like, we're from Nassau County. So Bethesda and Montgomery County is very similar to Nassau County, right? It's a really nice suburb of a big city. People commute to and from, and, good schools. So, when I got injured, we were thinking, where do we want to end up? And we were thinking about going back to Long Island. But I told Gina, I was like, look, the Long Island we grew up in 20 some odd years ago, it's not the same. It's, and a lot of people were telling us that too. And we just decided to stay in this area because, one, specifically, if I needed anything, the hospital's a mile down the road. I didn't know what I was going to do for work, but I figured whatever it was going to be, I'd be able to tap into the special operations community, or even the West Point and the military academy, the service academy communities, very big support networks here in the capital region. So it just made sense to kind of stay in the area.
Cool. I want to talk a little bit about discipline. You undoubtedly have extraordinary discipline after all of your experiences, and have overcome obstacles from the qualifications to your injury. How do you discipline your kids? Like, how do you keep them in line, keep them from being little shitheads?
Yeah, I mean, that's funny. Like, sometimes you deal with kids and you're like, man, somebody just needs to teach this kid not to be successful, right? And honestly, you do have to get strict and stern with them. Like, I don't hit my kids by any means, but I do raise my voice. And it's just, I feel like you have to instill that kind of sense. We joke about it. It's better to be feared than loved sometimes. Like, my kids know when I'm serious, right? And when I say time to go, it's time to go. Like, now's not the time to be fucking around and running around the house and tell me that you only can find one shoe. And, but look, they're 8 and 4, so shit happens, right? Like, Peyton misplaced his soccer cleat the other day, and we're running late to soccer. As much as I want to be like, dude, this is just so fucking unacceptable, deep breaths and I pace myself, and I do remember that he's 8, and like, all right, let me be a little clever about this, and how can I turn this into a learning lesson? And so now Gina went and bought him a new pair of cleats, and I told him, hey, those are inspectable items. Wherever you want to keep them, you keep them. But I better be able to look at any point of the day and see those 2 cleats right there. I was like, you want to put them under your bed so I can see them? No. You want to put them in your bag? All right, great. Leave them in your soccer bag. At any time when those things aren't on your feet, they better be in that fucking bag so I can check them out. They're in the bag.
That's great. So do you have any particular practice that you use to keep from freaking out? Like, some people count to 5, some people hold their breath.
I wouldn't advise holding the breath.
Take too long.
I tell you what, I do. So 2 things. One, losing my legs has definitely taught me to be more patient. Mm-hmm. Just because, before, super type A personality, go. I obviously can't go as much as I want to now. So I have to be more patient about things. So it has taught me patience. The second thing is, I'm a big practitioner, I guess, of hot yoga. So I do it like twice a week. And I feel like, not just for the physical, like stretching, and, it is like rehab for me, because walking in prosthetics, it makes my back tight, and, just always constantly working out, and, being in the heat helps. But also, I think mentally it helps me kind of calm down and get, just be more zen. So I think that has helped a lot too. Plus, I remember a trick that they taught you in SEER school during, if you're ever getting interrogated, you're supposed to take like 3 deep breaths and make sure like you're keeping pace and a good rhythm of like how you're speaking, so you're not all frantic and pissed off, and you want to just be cool and calm and slow and methodical. So that helps as well.
So can you give me an example of that a little bit? 3 deep breaths, like before you speak, or is that like as you're speaking, you're trying to create some cadence and like, explain that.
Yeah. So what I would do is I would take a deep breath, and then I would tap my leg like 5 times or 3 times, just to make sure I'm giving myself a pause. Like, and then I'll be like, all right, let me address this, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
I do that, now thinking about that also, something that as an SF guy, especially as a captain and a leader, when you're talking on the radio during a firefight, one of the things I was always taught, especially during the officer portion of the qualification course, was, you're on SATCOM, so people can hear you all over the globe, in this firefight, requesting for bombs to be dropped on, like danger close, because you've got, half your team is bleeding out and you're being overrun. But people need to hear on the radio this like cool, calm, and confident voice that you have everything under control, because that is, it's like comfort, or I guess what's the right word? Like almost like via osmosis. Like if they hear that you're cool and calm, everybody else is going to be cool and calm around you.
That's amazing, and I've of course seen portrayals of such things and heard recordings of such things, and it impresses me to absolutely no end. And it's almost kind of funny to me to think that the same person that can deliver that message can be like, "Get your fucking cleats in order. Wear your fucking cleats." Being fired at, you're cool, but
yeah. Everybody has their breaking points.
And leave it to a 4-year-old and 8-year-old to find yours.
Yeah.
What are a couple of characteristics your kids have that they get from you?
I think that Peyton has my determination and my wife's determination. And I think my daughter, Gina's already said it. Marquesa has my fearlessness. I mean, she steps off things and goes down slides, and they're at the beach. We're back up on Long Island at the beach for most of the summer, and she would just run into the waves recklessly and get thrown around, and be all shocked and realize that, all right, I'm cool, I'm okay, and laugh it off and run right back into the ocean. So I think that she has that part to me, which we'll probably have to be a little more careful of as she gets older.
So what are some characteristics you hope that your kids have as they get older?
I hope that they're not like little assholes, right? Like, I just hope that they're good human beings. And I think that we're, nobody's perfect. I think that we try and do the best that we can as parents, with steering them correctly, right? It's like they'll do well, and then they kind of drift and get into this pattern, and we correct them a little bit. And they do well, and they drift and get into this habit, and we correct them a little bit. And I think it's just making sure that we're always kind of cognizant and present with them, and with them, right? So that it's not like they go so far off to the right that when you try and correct them, it's such an effort that they may not recover from. But I guess I would hope that Peyton continues to be this dedicated, hardworking little guy, and Marquesa too, and just they're good people and happy.
What's a great piece of advice that somebody's given you in regards to parenting?
Honestly, I guess I haven't really been given any sort of advice when it comes to parenting. I've kind of just been figuring it out on the fly, and looking back on my lessons, and things that I feel like my parents did right, or as a kid I really enjoyed being around there, as a kid, things that I enjoyed that my parents did. And I think one of those things is trying to just be like cognizant and available for them as much as possible. Like I try and make an effort, I think, to like wrestle around with them, and, and to play around with them. And, when we go to the park, I don't just like whip out my phone and start like going through Instagram and like doing emails. Like, I'll play with them however I can, whether it's like I push them on the seesaw a little bit, or I push them on the swings, because I think that those are things that they'll kind of like always remember. Those are things that I remember of my parents playing with me on the playground, or my dad, throwing the ball around with me, like being able to put the football around with Peyton, or like little things like that.
Yeah. Your son's probably not old enough to start flirting with like social media. What's like a 8-year-old parent managing with an 8-year-old right now?
Well, he has just figured out YouTube and the iPad. So that was a big thing. Like I guess we'll always let them use the iPad and YouTube, because I think that if you try and shelter them from it too much, then when they eventually figure it out, like almost like sugar or cookies, right? Like if you hide it from the kids, once they eat cookies, they're going to be like, holy shit, this is the greatest thing ever. That's all I want to eat is cookies. So like trying to pace them and let them play around with it a little bit, because I think it's kind of like when we grew up and I had a Nintendo, right? Like my parents didn't want me to sit in front of the computer or sit in front of the TV and play Mike Tyson Punch-Out for 6 hours, but I was allowed to play it for a little bit, and then my parents would turn it off and make me go outside and be a kid. So I feel like we try and do the same thing when it comes to the kids being able like to mess around on the iPad or watch our phones or, watch like little kid videos on YouTube or whatever. And I think that's like perfectly fine. I mean, we're still very cognizant and like, I'll listen and see or hear like what he's listening to and making sure it's not just like something crazy. Like he somehow went into like some sort of like ISIS YouTube black hole and like watching decapitation videos or something crazy like that, which hasn't happened. So yeah, just little doses I think are fine. That's pretty much the biggest thing right now.
Yeah. What's one of the biggest impacts just having kids has made on you and your personality?
I mean, I don't think that there is something that I'd classify or like determine as like a setback by having kids. I mean, I think that I guess a better way maybe to answer it or to phrase it is just you realize that it's not about you anymore. I mean, it just takes up so much more of your time because you have two little human beings that you're responsible for. And it's just, you really got to be better, with your time and with like what you want to do. So, for me, I've always been pretty structured, all boys boarding school for high school and West Point and then the Army. So, putting together like a calendar or to-do list isn't, it's like what I do every day of like knowing what I'm going to do and knocking out tasks. And, I wake up and I think about, all right, when am I going to work out? And all right, I'll have about 30 minutes to work out here. And then I got to take Peyton to this or pick more kids up to that. So just knowing that I'm kind of boom, 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 boom. And that's just, part of my life. And that's fine because I couldn't imagine life like without them. It's just, I don't know. I'd have too much free time on my hands.
Well, I'm curious to know, I get the feeling that there are probably a lot of people that feel like their life has been disrupted by having kids. They love their kids, but they get in the way of their own goals. I used to have 17 hours a day to work. Now I only have 10 or 12. And so it would be incredibly easy for you to feel like it is Ben's world. I'm the one that was the victim of this. I'm the one that had this. I can only imagine that after a traumatic event, it took you a while to adjust your mind to your new way of living and to take yourself outside of that to be the parent that's focused on their kids and not on themselves. Is there any particular process or piece of advice that you could suggest for other parents who might have a reason to feel like the kids aren't more important or that they should be, oriented in a better way?
I don't know if I have a piece of advice, but as you were saying that, it jogged my memory. Something that I was doing, and I don't know if it talked about in that article or if John told you, or maybe you saw on like social media. I was playing a lot of sled hockey, and I was actually playing sled hockey with the Italian national team. So I qualified for dual citizenship, et cetera, et cetera. And I was back playing with them last September. And I was set to go back to Italy in the fall to go play in like the annual tournament in Torino. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. I was able to play hockey again, which is a sport I grew up, my first sport I loved. I was playing goalie, which is like the position that I grew up playing. And I traveled to Europe for a long weekend to go play hockey, and it was cool. I felt like I was almost like a professional athlete again, at this high level. And dawned on me during the winter. I was actually up at Whitetail skiing. Like I got big into mono skiing, and I was riding the lift up there. And I was like, you know what? I feel like I would rather take my time and enjoy like what I got here than trying to like continually try and like push it to like achieve and gain and achieve and gain. Like I just learned how to ski. I kind of feel like I would rather just come up to Whitetail and ski one Friday morning and then take Peyton to hockey on Saturday morning and then watch him play soccer on Sunday and, you know, do whatever with Marchesa and help coach Peyton in hockey and just like watch these two become like amazing athletes and human beings and focus my time on that while also building my business than trying to like be this Paralympic hockey player. And it just, you know, like for me personally, I don't know if I'd obviously work for other people, but look, I played 4 years of divisional lacrosse in the highest level. I went to the NCAAs, right? Like these are things that like in high school you dream about doing. Mm-hmm. I did everything in the military I wanted to do, right? I earned my Green Beret. I did all these combat stuff. You know, I have 3 Bronze Stars. It just, I was like, I'm content. Like I'm not looking to like reopen a career in something else. I just felt like it was time to kind of like enjoy like what I got going on now and new hobbies and figuring out like new things and new activities now that I don't have legs, like mono skiing, which I love. And just watching these two like grow up and be there for them.
So I can sympathize with the idea of wanting to continue to push yourself so much to the extent that you go, oh shit, you know, I'm missing stuff. Did you have was that like an aha moment on the ski lift where you went, you know, I need to pay more attention to this? Or right now, all I want to do is take my weekends and go do shit, you know? Yeah.
I mean, I still like for skiing, like I still try and figure out how I can get away with like my army buddies that do ski, like to go do ski stuff. But skiing is just another activity skiing is an activity I picked up after I got injured. And to be honest, I think if I skied before I got injured, I probably wouldn't enjoy skiing as much as I do now, because it's something new and totally different for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't think it was so much of like, I'm missing out on being there for Peyton. It was just, maybe I guess it was some of that because I did enjoy being, you know, a coach for Peyton at hockey and being there. It was just like, I was like weighing it, right? Like having that's one of the reasons I love skiing is because the 10-minute ride up on the lift is like this quiet, peaceful time where you kind of just like gather your thoughts. And it just kind of dawned on me like, you know what? I actually enjoy, you know, coaching hockey and watching Peyton become a hockey player, a soccer player, and like just being around more than going and playing hockey. Because I was like, in my mind, I'm like, it's Paralympic hockey. I mean, it's not the Olympic. You know, it's not like I'm playing Division I lacrosse in this super competitive world. It's Paralympics. I mean, like not to knock the Paralympics, but like it's Paralympics. It's not like what I did before. Mm-hmm. So I was like, you know what? I'd rather just find other new interesting things to push myself. And whether that's, you know, skiing new slopes and going off jumps or something fun and crazy like that. And just watching my kids grow up.
Yeah. Well, I want to be sensitive to your time. I'm going to jump into some kind of, I call them short answer questions.
Yeah.
So let's say, what's your role as a dad?
What, I guess I think that my role as a dad is to kind of be the example that my son and my daughter want to grow up to be. You know, it goes back to the leadership piece. Is, you know, you want to follow the leader that looks right. You want to be that example, and you want to lead by example.
What's the greatest hope that you could have for your kids?
I just that they're happy when they're grown up, that they're, you know, like now, like I'm pretty happy. Like, I mean, look, I've lost my legs, but I've done a lot of great things in my life, athletically and personally. And just, I'm pretty content and still going forward. You know, I hope that they're the same way when they get older.
Hey, this is a little off topic, but I wanted to ask you, what, since your injury, what's something that you've learned about yourself?
Um, I think that probably that I'm a lot tougher than I think that I am.
Mhm. You think you've
Uh,
always had it in you, and that's what it took to find out?
yeah, I think that I always kind of had it in me, and it took something like as crazy as this to really show me that I can endure a lot more than physically and mentally think that I can endure. Uh, I think that especially within special force, or not especially within special forces, but for me, being around so many, I don't know, everyone has like self-doubt, right? You're around all these guys that are other special forces guys. And, you're like, wow, I've made it. Like I'm on a special forces team. I'm leading SF guys. And sometimes I think that can be intimidating. Just like any other job. Like I'm sure guys, when they first get to the NFL, they're like, wow, I'm in the NFL. But I think that after getting injured and going through everything that I did, and also going through everything that I did before my injury, kind of looking back, there was a reason that I was there. There was a reason that I got selected. There was a reason that I was allowed to lead 2 separate SF teams. It just solidified that.
Cool. If you were going to write a book about your life as a parent, what would be the name of a couple chapters?
Jesus. I guess failure would be one of them. Somebody else was telling me that I need to write a book, and I just have not had enough time in the day to sit there and like write a book. That's tough. I guess, yeah, failure. I don't know, man. I'd have to come back to that one. I'm still, I guess I'm still trying to figure out the chapters right now. My kid's only 8 and 4. It come back to me in like 10 years.
Well, we could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have a favorite fictional dad, favorite TV dad?
Favorite TV dad. Peyton and I like watching The Simpsons. So Homer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The billboard question. You're on 495 going 2 miles an hour. Actually, I'd like to be on 495 going 75 miles an hour. And there's a billboard on the side of the road, and you've got it. You can leave a piece of advice for all parents out there, but it's got to fit on the billboard, and they got to read it going 80 miles an hour past it. What do you put on that billboard?
These are like interview questions.
This is an interview, Ben.
Yeah, it's true. I guess I would say take a deep breath and then say, take a deep breath and then speak.
I think that's awesome advice. If money, time, space were no object, and you were able to give a gift to every father on the planet, what gift would you give every father?
I would give the look that Marquesa gave me the first time that we were in our swimming pool, and she like swam like by herself for the first time with me. That look of like, I did it. And it melted my heart. Like there's nothing else like that. Like having your daughter so excited and happy that she just swam to you, and it was the first time ever. And, she thinks that she can now go swim in the deep end with all the big girls, and she's still 4.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
When in your life do you feel the most loved?
When in my life do I feel the most loved? I guess when it could be, you know what it is? It's at night when I'm putting my kids to bed, I think. So I'm more of the evening person, and Sheena's more the morning person. So I'll usually put the kids to bed. So that's usually when I feel, I guess, the most loved is laying in bed and putting Marquesa to sleep, and then she'll fall asleep, and then I'll head over to Peyton's room, and he'll read his book, and I'll read whatever book I'm reading, and then we'll fall asleep watching some sort of either some sort of history documentary or like Survivor Man. I think right now we're on watching episodes of Survivor Man. So it's still entertaining but educational at the same time.
Cool. And this will be my last question. So in the event that this recording were to last forever and you got to deliver a message to every generation of your family, their kids, what's a message that you'd love for them to all hear from you?
Just don't give up. I mean, really, it's that simple. Don't give up. Just continue going. You know, one foot in front of the other. I guess it would be, you know, before I started Ranger School, I was obviously everyone's intimidated to start Ranger School. It's like this major crucible, like kind of your first real big military school. As an infantry officer, like you got to pass it. Otherwise you're kind of looked down upon by not having your Ranger tab. And I remember talking to a West Point guy that I graduated 05. He was 03. And I remember talking to him and he's like, yeah, man. He's like, look, you can do it. He's like, all it is just putting one foot in front of the other. He's like, that's really it. He's like, you just always continue to walk just every day. And I was like, wow, you know, it sounded so simple and kind of stupid, but looking back on it, it's so true, right? Like, it's not, all right, Jesus, I'm starting Ranger School. Like, I got 72 days of this. It's not like what you focus on. It's just, what do we got going on today? All right, I'll just keep putting one foot in front of the other and do whatever this task is and go to bed. And then tomorrow, one foot in front of the other, like whatever this task is, and do it and then go to bed. And then before you know it, you're on day like 70 and you're going to graduate in 2 days. So that's probably the advice I'd like to give to the generations of Harrows coming after me.
Awesome. Ben Harrow.